Hello, everyone. My name is Bilska. I'm part of Sector 30 team, and welcome to our conversation with Mike Tyler. Hello, Mike. I'd like to
Hi,
say a
Olga.
few
How are
words.
you?
I'd like to say a few words about you to introduce you to our audience today. You are a professor in Franklin University's graduate instructional design and performance technology program. Yes, and you're learning consultant on a mission to rid the world of boring, ineffectual training. And we are here today to talk about exactly that, how to rid the world of boring, ineffectual training, and a little bit more about e-learning in general. Um, on your LinkedIn profile, you say you are all about engaging people with the right content in the right place at the right time and getting them excited about learning in our distracted world. So, thank you again for being with us, and I'm going to ask a few questions about your approach to e-learning. So, thank you for joining the conversation in Sector 30's topic of learning and growing. And learning and growing are exactly what is happening when you are taking an e-learning course. But in order for it to be effective for you, in order for it to be engaging, you have to bear in mind the user experience as a designer, right? So, how to
Yeah.
design user experience in e-learning? Where to start?
Yeah. Thanks for the setup, Olga. Great to talk to you and everybody else. So I think the first thing that's really critical, maybe more important than anything else, is to make sure that e-learning is the right solution. So before you start designing an e-learning course, it's really important that it has a chance to be effective. One of the ways I like to do that is there's a model called the 6 boxes model that's based on Thomas Gilbert's behavior engineering model, and it helps you identify the factors that affect workplace performances. So that could be internal factors like tools and resources and the environment, or internal factors like knowledge and skills and motivation. And we don't want to send an e-learning course to fix something that may be related to lack of tools or lack of resources. So that's the first place that I would always start. Um, Once you've determined that e-learning is the right solution, then you sort of need to turn your attention to your audience. What do they need? What's their environment like? What are their interests and motivations? And then if you understand your audience well, you'll be able to tailor your content, which is going to make the experience more engaging and effective. Once you start into the design and development of things, you want to make sure your interface is simple, easy to use. Think of things like accessibility. If you have any mobile learners, responsiveness considerations will come into play, and that's going to be important. And then when you're sort of you've got all that stuff in place, and you're starting to turn to the actual content. You want to design something that's not just informative, but hopefully also engaging and interactive. So consider using a variety of media formats, graphics, audio, video. And the absolute most important step in this phase is using instructional design strategies that are going to support learning. And so if you can put all those things together into an e-learning course, you're going to probably have pretty good success. I would also add to that, test it. So it doesn't have to be a large number of testers, but grab some small number that's representative. Get feedback from real learners. That's invaluable. And then the final thing I would say is I never put out e-learning that doesn't have some mechanism for learners to communicate. So it could be via email, a web form, a sort of chat feature, something like that. I found that really invaluable to foster those conversations.
Right. So you are approaching e-learning uh, as a social experience, right? It means like the element of social exchange is a really important motivator and makes people engaged.
Absolutely. I think the more ways that we can provide learners to communicate, to let them, ask questions, maybe they voice some concerns. If we've got a mechanism to give feedback or additional support, then I think that's a really critical thing to successful e-learning programs.
Right. You're talking about the exchange between the learners and you as the course provider, but also the social exchanges between the participants, of course, participants, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I'm glad you sort of helped clarify that, because I think oftentimes, we've all probably experienced this in person. If you're at a conference or some event, the sessions are really great and fabulous, but oftentimes those communications and conversations in the hallway or around the coffee pot with other learners. So I think facilitating those connections is also a super valuable thing to do.
Yeah, right. That's my favorite part. That's why I wanted to ask you. All right. Well, you have mentioned that for the course to be effective, it has to be engaging. It has to grab, yes, the participant from the very start. And you have also mentioned a lot of that the course should involve different sort of media, right? Different materials. We would go for it. I mean, inexperienced designer would go for it to use a lot of media, to use a lot of materials, to use too many of them, maybe sometimes. How do you go about it? What advice would you give a designer in order not to overdo? Yes, not to go overboard. How to engage the audience without going overboard?
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna try to take that in two parts: the engagement part, and then the interactivity part. And
All
so,
right.
one of the things I've talked about for quite some time is the similarity that what marketing does and how similar it is to what we in learning and development do. We're both trying to get people's attention and get them to do something in a new way or do a new thing. And so, I think if you look at marketers, they understand that, people are not really paying close attention to most things, and they've got to do something to break out of the ordinary and get their attention, and then be very efficient at getting their message across. So
Mm,
that part, I think there's a lot of things we can look to our marketing peers and borrow or steal some of the tactics that they're doing. And then so assuming we can get that attention, if we move on to sort of engaging without going overboard, the interactivity component is super important to keep learners engaged. It helps keep their attention, their motivation. I think it helps them understand and remember the material better. But we have to sort of balance that, because too much interactivity can be counterproductive, or if it's the wrong type of interactivity, it actually becomes distracting and causes cognitive overload and makes the learning outcomes worse. So our goal as designers and developers, we should be engaging them in the brain instead of just in our clicking next buttons, or adding a whole bunch of swiping, clicking, and dragging and dropping without a good instructional purpose. It really makes for a worse experience and a worse outcome. So we have to use those interactions purposefully and selectively, in a way that support the learning objectives, and also so that it's not too complex or overwhelming, which is going to sort of defeat the purpose of having the interactivity in the first place.
right. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's difficult. I mean, especially if you are a beginner when designing courses, you really want to, involve all the possible tools, and you believe that it will make the participants more engaged, and it will help them, assimilate the knowledge better. But it doesn't always work this way. Not for everyone. So it's yeah, it's difficult, as you mentioned. testing and consulting with different users before you release the course is one of the ways you can check out whether it's working. I have myself got some experience with overdoing because I'm a great fan of new technological tools, and then it turned out less is more, and it's advisable to reduce. Yes. One of the media that are quite frequently used nowadays and very easily available is the video format. And I'd like to ask you your experience with the video format. Is it the case that it's becoming the most the most favorite media format for students, for course participants? What would be your advice on using video? What about the length, or maybe the number of videos in a course? Is there anything like that? Are there any rules about that?
Yeah, so video obviously has a lot of advantages and can be pretty powerful tool for supporting learning. I think I've seen some stats. If you take social media as an example, there's a vast majority, somewhere in the neighborhood of probably 80 or 90% of traffic on those kind of sites are video. We've all probably seen the stats for the number of YouTube videos uploaded per minute, right? It's more than we could probably watch in a lifetime. So obviously it's very popular and it's powerful for a good reason. Video obviously gives us a visual and auditory medium to convey information, which can be more engaging and memorable than just written or spoken instructions by themselves. Obviously, music and sound effects and visuals are going to create, more immersive depth experience. It's also really useful in fields or topics that are difficult to get from just reading or listening. So things like maybe medical topics, engineering, even cooking, right? So the visual aspect can really be a benefit in those type of areas. Illustrating concepts, so abstract and complex ideas are good area that video can be applied to. It's also got some really nice benefits of, as long as you have a good internet connection, it's pretty portable. It can go anywhere. It can play on a phone, on a browser, on a computer. The challenges come in sometimes. It's not a one size fits all. It's not great in every context. So there may be some situations. I mentioned internet. Maybe you have poor connectivity. You have poor video quality, poor materials. It's not always sufficient for effective learning. So sometimes video lacks the interactivity, which could make it difficult to ask questions and get the feedback that we were talking about a little bit ago. And so, just understanding, again, understanding your learners, what's their prior knowledge, what's their motivation, and sort of fitting all of those pieces together, I think are important. When it comes to length, I think there's a saying that says should be long enough and no longer, but that's really a fuzzy thing. That's the designer's skill and experience come into play. I don't think there's a recipe of, if this, then 5-minute video type of thing. So less is more, to your earlier comment as well. One of the things that I think marketers are really good at is that efficiency of messaging. So say it in as few words as you can and sort of get in and get out and move on. So those are some of the things that I try to use to guide myself when I'm doing learning videos.
I see. All right. So maybe one more questions related to the last thing you said about less is more, and also using the correct, the exact language, the language that you don't go overboard. You stick to short messages that are really powerful. But how can we prepare experts that we invite to the course if they are not like themselves experts at presenting, to delivering the material, the knowledge that you want to pass on to the participants. It's really difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is a challenge that I think anybody who's ever done training, especially with subject matter experts, has faced. Um, and it can be challenging. So a lot of those experts, they don't stand up in front of groups or they don't record themselves on video. So I think the best thing that I've had the most success with is you kind of have to do a little bit of homework or pre-work with them. So
Mm-hmm.
setting some conversations in advance that you really define what the learning objectives are, what are the outcomes. So not listing 200 learning objectives because it's way too much. And so understanding how to kind of right size what you're doing. So if it's a large topic, breaking that down into smaller components and chunking that out and sort of educating them in a way, sort of how good learning works. Give them some guidelines about what's going to happen, what's going to be the length of things. Typically, either it's a script or at least a set of talking points that you've talked through with them and you've come to their agreement, so they won't have any surprises. So if they show up the day of recording, we want to sort of have no surprises and nothing that's going to kind of set us on a detour.
Mm-hmm.
Give them some practice runs, help them understand. Maybe they need technical support with the software or the equipment, that
Mm-hmm.
sort of stuff. And depending on your relationship, hopefully you are buying them cookies and being good to all your experts. But a little bit of coaching and feedback just on sort of general speaking, on their delivery, their presentation skills. Things like PowerPoint has a built-in presenter coach that can help them with filler words. And if you have
Mm-hmm.
an editor, if you're going to edit the video, tools like Descript, which can automatically go through and remove those filler words, the ums and the ahs and all of that sort of stuff. And really, I think that all of that is getting to a point of making them comfortable and being sure that they understand you're going to make them look as good as possible.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, from what you say, it seems like inviting an expert is not the like the ultimate success. First, you need to prepare the person, right? Get ready together. You have to find out how easygoing they are in front of the camera, right? So it's like more than the work of inviting them and getting hold of them, because sometimes they're difficult to access, right? So you have to bear in mind that it takes a lot of work to prepare an expert for your e-learning course, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And just setting an invitation and a recording equipment up and then expecting everything to turn out well
Yeah.
is probably, unless you have a really outstanding person who you've worked with before and they're expert and they're amazing. It's really hard. It seems simple, and people who haven't done it before think, oh, it's just easy. I'll turn up and start
Yeah.
talking. But anyone
Yeah.
who's done it more than once realizes it's really, really difficult to do it well and make it look easy.
Right. Okay, it wasn't difficult to talk to you, and it really it was easy for me. It didn't require a lot of preparation on our side. I think we just had a really nice conversation. Oh, thank you again for joining us for the festival, Mike, and for everyone who has participated and watched our conversation. I'd like to invite you to Mike's blog if you want to learn more about how to make great e-learning experience, about the tools that you can use, and about Mike's theory that we have to steal from marketers because they know how to approach the audience. This is what you can find on Mike's blog. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olga. I really had a good time.